In this episode, we delve into the extraordinary story of Job, a man whose faith was tested in unimaginable ways. Job's narrative is not just a tale of suffering, it is a deep exploration of faith, perseverance, and the quest for understanding in the face of adversity. Job lived in a time when prosperity and suffering were often viewed as direct indicators of one's standing with God. His life began as a testament to righteousness, blessed with wealth, a loving family, and a strong relationship with God. However, his world was turned upside down when he faced a series of devastating trials that stripped him of everything he held dear. Through Job's journey, we encounter key themes such as the nature of suffering, the question of divine justice, and the complexities of human faith. These themes resonate deeply with many of us as we navigate our own challenges and uncertainties. As we unravel this powerful story, we encourage you to reflect on your own experiences with suffering and faith. How do you respond when faced with trials? What can we learn from Job's unwavering trust in God amidst his darkest moments? Stay tuned as we embark on this exploration of Job's story, uncovering lessons that can inspire and guide us in our own journeys of faith. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement means the world to us. The book of Job is set against a backdrop that provides critical insights into the ancient world, particularly regarding the nature of suffering, divine justice, and human wisdom. Understanding the historical and cultural context of Job's time enhances our comprehension of the themes explored within the story. The story of Job likely takes place in the land of Uz, which is not precisely identified, but is thought to be located in the region of Edom, south of Israel. This geographical context situates Job within the broader ancient Near Eastern civilization, characterized by a rich tapestry of cultures, religions, and philosophies. During Job's time, society was primarily agrarian, with wealth being measured by land ownership, livestock, and family size. The social structure was hierarchical, with patriarchal family systems prevalent. Wealthy individuals like Job would have held significant influence, not only within their families but also in the larger community. The responsibilities of a patriarch included providing for the family, maintaining social order, and engaging in religious practices. The ancient Near East was characterized by polytheism, with various nations worshiping multiple gods associated with natural forces and aspects of life. However, the worship of Yahweh, the God of Israel, set the Israelites apart from surrounding cultures. Job's relationship with God, marked by reverence and fear, reflects the beliefs of a devout follower of Yahweh in a predominantly polytheistic environment. The tension between different religious beliefs and practices would be significant, particularly as Job grapples with suffering and divine justice. In ancient societies, suffering was often interpreted as a consequence of divine displeasure or moral failing. This perspective underpins much of the discourse in the book of Job. The friends who come to comfort Job believe that his suffering must be a result of sin, highlighting the prevalent belief that piety is rewarded while wrongdoing is punished. This cultural understanding shapes the conversations and arguments presented throughout the narrative. Job is introduced in the biblical narrative as a man of extraordinary character and integrity. The opening verses of the book of Job paint a vivid picture of his life and virtues. Job is described as blameless and upright, a man who feared God and shunned evil. This description establishes him as a paragon of righteousness in the ancient world. At the time of his introduction, Job was immensely wealthy, possessing vast flocks, herds, and a large household. His wealth not only indicated his social status, but also served as a blessing from God. Job was also blessed with a large family, consisting of 7 sons and 3 daughters. He took great care to provide for his children, regularly offering sacrifices on their behalf, fearing that they might sin against God. This aspect of Job's character highlights his deep sense of responsibility and love for his family, emphasizing his role not only as a successful man, but also as a devoted father. Job's piety is illustrated through his daily rituals and unwavering faith. He consistently sought to maintain a right relationship with God, which sets the stage for the dramatic events that follow. His devotion to God serves as a contrast to the trials he will soon endure, making his steadfastness all the more remarkable. Job's character serves as a lens through which we can examine the broader themes of innocence and suffering. Despite his righteousness, Job will soon face devastating trials, prompting us to consider the nature of suffering in our own lives. Why do the righteous suffer? How do we reconcile our understanding of a just God with the realities of pain and loss? Job's character invites us to explore these questions, setting the foundation for the narrative that unfolds. The book of Job opens with a unique and profound scene set in the heavenly realms, introducing a cosmic perspective on the nature of faith, suffering, and divine justice. This heavenly dialogue serves as the catalyst for the events that unfold in Job's life, setting the stage for a deeper exploration of the human condition and the relationship between God and humanity. The atmosphere is one of reverence and authority, with God presiding over the proceedings. This setting underscores the sovereignty of God and his ultimate control over both heavenly and earthly matters. In this council, God is portrayed as omniscient and sovereign, fully aware of the motivations and actions of his creation. His presence signifies not just power, but also a deep engagement with the world and its inhabitants. When God speaks, he asserts his authority and invites discussion regarding human behavior, particularly concerning the character of Job. This framing emphasizes God's role as both creator and judge, invested in the moral and spiritual condition of humanity. Among the heavenly beings is a figure identified as the Satan, or the accuser. This role is critical as Satan functions not merely as an adversary, but as a challenger within the divine council. The term Satan in this context can be understood as an office rather than a personal name, reflecting his role in testing and probing the faithfulness of humans. Satan's presence introduces an element of conflict and scrutiny, suggesting that faith is subject to challenge and examination. The dialogue takes a pivotal turn when Satan challenges the integrity of Job's faithfulness. He posits that Job serves God not out of genuine devotion, but because of the blessings and protection he enjoys. Satan suggests that Job's righteousness is merely a product of the favorable circumstances God has provided him, implying that his loyalty would falter if those blessings were removed. This challenge brings to the forefront the question of whether faith is genuine or transactional. This accusation invites us to reflect on the nature of faith itself. Is faith a result of God's blessings, or does it exist independently of external circumstances? Satan's challenge poses a critical question about the motivations behind belief and the integrity of one's relationship with God. It raises the stakes for Job, framing his faith as a point of contention in the heavenly realm. By casting doubt on Job's motives, Satan sets the stage for the tests that will follow. His challenge implies that faith, when tested, reveals its true nature. The dialogue serves as a profound commentary on the human experience, how trials can lead to deeper understandings of faith and reliance on God. It raises the philosophical and theological issue of why bad things happen to good people and what role divine testing plays in spiritual growth. In response to Satan's challenge, God grants permission for Job to be tested. For Job, this permission transforms his life in an instant. He is unaware of the heavenly dialogue, yet his life becomes the battleground for a cosmic struggle between faith and doubt. This dramatic shift underscores the idea that individuals may face challenges and sufferings, beyond their understanding, rooted in larger spiritual dynamics that transcend earthly experiences. The implications of God's permission are profound. It suggests that suffering can serve a greater purpose, even when it seems incomprehensible. The story illustrates that God can use trials to refine character, deepen faith, and ultimately lead to greater understanding of divine sovereignty and human dependence on God. This perspective can provide comfort to those experiencing suffering, as it implies that their struggles may be part of a larger narrative of redemption and growth. The heavenly dialogue in the book of Job sets the stage for a profound exploration of faith, suffering, and divine justice. The roles of God and Satan highlight the complexities of human belief and the nature of testing. As the story unfolds, the implications of this cosmic conversation invite us to reflect on their own faith journeys and the challenges that come with it, ultimately leading to a deeper understanding of God's sovereignty and the human condition. Let's explore the catastrophic events that befall Job, his initial reactions to these tragedies, and the pivotal role played by his wife during this dark period. Job, once a prosperous man, loses his wealth in a series of devastating events. One day, while his servants are tending to his flocks, raiders attack and steal his livestock, killing those who try to protect them. Before Job can even grasp the magnitude of this loss, a messenger arrives to inform him that fire has consumed his sheep and servants, resulting in yet another tragic loss. Each report compounds Job's anguish, illustrating the sheer brutality of his circumstances. The destruction of his wealth signifies not just financial ruin, but the shattering of his social standing and identity within the community. The calamity intensifies with the news of the death of Job's children. They were gathered for a feast at the oldest brother's house when a great wind struck the house, causing it to collapse. Job's heartache at the loss of his children is immeasurable. He mourns the loss of his family, which is more profound than any material wealth. This tragedy highlights the fragility of life and the harsh reality that suffering can strike indiscriminately, affecting even the most righteous and devout. Just as Job begins to process these immense losses, he is afflicted with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. The physical agony Job endures mirrors the emotional and spiritual torment he faces. Stripped of his health, wealth, and family, Job is thrust into a state of utter despair. His physical suffering serves as a manifestation of the profound grief he already carries, emphasizing the interconnectedness of mind, body, and spirit in the human experience. In the face of unimaginable loss, Job's initial reaction is one of profound faithfulness. He tears his robe and shaves his head, a traditional expression of mourning, but he also falls to the ground in worship. This act of worship is significant. It underscores Job's commitment to God even when faced with the harshest trials. His response encapsulates the essence of unwavering faith as he acknowledges God's sovereignty over both his blessings and his suffering. One of the most poignant declarations from Job during this time is seen in the book of Job, chapter 1, verse 21. "The Lord gave and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." This statement reflects Job's understanding that his existence and possessions are ultimately gifts from God. Rather than cursing God for his suffering, Job chooses to bless him, embodying a profound trust in God's ultimate plan. This moment serves as a testament to his character, revealing a man who recognizes that faith is not conditional upon favorable circumstances. Although Job remains faithful, his internal struggle is palpable. He grapples with the confusion and anguish that accompany such catastrophic events. The tension between his faith and his suffering creates a rich narrative exploration of the human condition. How can one remain faithful when faced with seemingly insurmountable trials? Job's struggle resonates with readers, inviting them to reflect on their own experiences of suffering and their responses to adversity. As Job endures the weight of his losses, his wife emerges as a pivotal figure in the narrative. She too experiences the trauma of loss, witnessing the destruction of her family and the decline of her husband. In her anguish, she expresses a raw and visceral reaction to their circumstances. Her perspective serves as a counterpoint to Job's steadfast faith, highlighting the different ways individuals cope with suffering. Job's wife suggests, "Do you still hold fast your integrity? Curse God and die." This statement reflects her despair and frustration, indicating that she believes there is no hope left. From her viewpoint, cursing God is a way to express the depth of their suffering, and perhaps an acknowledgement that their circumstances are unbearable. Her suggestion also raises important questions about faith and doubt. While Job chooses to remain faithful, his wife's response illustrates the struggle to understand and accept suffering. Job's reply to his wife is significant. "You speak as one of the foolish women would speak. Shall we receive good from God, and shall we not receive evil?" This response highlights Job's unwavering commitment to God, despite the pain he is experiencing. He acknowledges the complexity of life, understanding that blessings and trials are both part of the human experience. Job's refusal to curse God showcases his profound faith and ability to see beyond immediate suffering to a larger divine plan. The interaction between Job and his wife opens the door to reflection on the nature of faith during suffering. It emphasizes that faith is not merely about receiving blessings, but about enduring hardship with integrity and trust in God. This dynamic underscores the diverse responses to suffering within relationships, revealing that even the closest bonds can be tested during times of crisis. The arrival of Job's friends marks a pivotal moment in the story, as their interactions bring both comfort and contention. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar come together to offer their support, but their dialogue soon evolves into a complex discussion about suffering, justice, and the nature of God. When Job's friends first arrive, they do so with the intent to console him. Upon seeing Job's grief-stricken state, they are overwhelmed by the depth of his suffering. The Bible portrays a poignant scene where they express their sorrow through mourning. They tear their robes and sprinkle dust on their heads, traditional gestures of grief. The three friends sit with Job in silence for 7 days and nights, an act that demonstrates deep empathy and solidarity. This period of silence allows Job to process his grief without the intrusion of words. It signifies a profound respect for his suffering, acknowledging that some moments are too painful for words. The friends' decision to remain silent underscores the importance of presence during times of grief. Their actions convey that they understand the weight of Job's pain, and they honor it through their companionship. This initial silence establishes a foundation for their friendship, highlighting the idea that sometimes just being there for someone can be more impactful than offering advice. After 7 days, Job finally breaks the silence, cursing the day of his birth and expressing his profound anguish. His lament sets the stage for the friends to respond. They are taken aback by Job's outburst, which challenges their understanding of suffering and righteousness. Eliphaz is the first to speak, seeking to provide Job with a framework for understanding his suffering. Drawing from a mystical experience, he emphasizes that the innocent do not suffer without cause. Eliphaz urges Job to consider whether he has sinned, positing that his suffering must stem from some hidden transgression. This perspective reflects a common belief in the ancient Near East that suffering is a direct result of sin, reinforcing the notion of divine retribution. Bildad follows, echoing similar sentiments. He asks Job to remember the teachings of their ancestors and insists that God does not pervert justice. His approach is more dogmatic, emphasizing that Job must have brought this suffering upon himself. Bildad's rigidity in reasoning frustrates Job, who feels his integrity is being questioned. Zophar, eager to add his voice, takes a more accusatory tone. He chastises Job for speaking too much and suggests that he is not even aware of the full extent of his sin. His impatience reveals a lack of compassion and understanding, as he fails to appreciate the depth of Job's suffering. As the friends argue their points, Job grows increasingly frustrated with their lack of understanding. He defends his integrity and questions their simplistic views of suffering. Job's response to their counsel is marked by a sense of isolation. He feels misunderstood and abandoned, emphasizing the inadequacy of their explanations. While the friends initially arrive to provide comfort, their dialogue soon becomes a source of distress for Job. Their insistence on a retributive understanding of suffering complicates the situation, transforming what could have been a healing conversation into a contentious debate. This shift underscores a critical lesson about the importance of empathy in times of crisis. Job's initial lament in the book of Job, chapter 3, verse 11, is a visceral outpouring of grief and confusion. He curses the day of his birth, wishing he had never been born to experience such pain. His words resonate with anyone who has faced profound loss or hardship. Why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb? This cry captures the depths of his despair, showcasing a man who feels utterly abandoned and powerless. Job's suffering is not limited to the loss of wealth and children. It also manifests physically and emotionally. He experiences debilitating pain, sitting in ashes, scraping his sores with broken pottery. This imagery evokes a sense of hopelessness, illustrating how suffering can engulf not just the body but the spirit. Job's lament is a multifaceted expression of his anguish, encompassing physical agony, emotional turmoil, and spiritual desolation. Job yearns for answers to the why of his suffering. He repeatedly questions God about the reason for his affliction, expressing a deep desire for understanding. In his lament, he articulates feelings of injustice, wondering why the innocent suffer while the wicked prosper. This fundamental question echoes throughout the ages, making Job's lament relatable to many who seek to understand the nature of suffering and divine justice. Job feels a profound sense of isolation as he laments his condition. His friends, although present, fail to comprehend the depth of his pain. They offer theological explanations that do not resonate with Job's lived experience. This disconnection intensifies his feelings of abandonment, leading him to believe that he is alone in his suffering. Job's lament becomes not only a cry for justice, but also a plea for companionship and understanding in his darkest hour. In the midst of his suffering, Job expresses a longing for an advocate, someone who can intercede on his behalf before God. He wishes for a mediator who can bridge the gap between himself and the divine. This desire underscores Job's feeling of helplessness. He believes that an advocate would provide him with a voice in the court of divine justice. Oh, that someone might plead with God as one pleads for a friend, he laments. Job's longing for an advocate reflects his deep desire for justice. He feels wronged by God and believes that he deserves a chance to present his case. Job desires a fair hearing, one where he can articulate his innocence and challenge the assumptions made about his character. His yearning for representation is rooted in the belief that true justice requires a thorough examination of one's circumstances. The notion of needing an advocate is significant in the context of Job's faith. It points to a deeper understanding of divine justice and the complexities of human suffering. Job's desire for a mediator foreshadows the theological development of Christ as the ultimate advocate, a concept that resonates with modern Christians who seek assurance of God's justice and mercy. Job's lament is marked by bold questions directed at God. He challenges the conventional wisdom of his time that equated suffering with divine punishment. By questioning God's justice, Job disrupts the simplistic narratives that often accompany suffering. Job's questioning invites a reevaluation of traditional views on divine justice. His insistence on his innocence and his demand for answers encourage deeper reflection on the nature of suffering. The book of Job becomes a platform for exploring the tension between human suffering and divine sovereignty, challenging readers to think critically about their beliefs. Job's lament speaks to a universal struggle faced by many believers. It acknowledges the reality that faith is not always accompanied by understanding or comfort. Job's willingness to question God reflects the authenticity of his faith. It is a faith that grapples with pain, seeks truth, and ultimately yearns for a relationship with the divine that is both honest and profound. After Job's lengthy lamentations and debates with his friends, the story takes a pivotal turn as God finally responds to Job. This response is one of the most powerful moments in the book of Job, where God speaks out of a whirlwind, offering a divine perspective on the nature of creation, human limitation, and the mysteries of suffering. Job's experience in this encounter underscores key theological themes, including the profound wisdom of God and the limitations of human understanding. Job's long-standing desire to present his case before God is finally granted, but instead of a direct answer to his suffering, God speaks in a series of rhetorical questions that challenge Job's understanding of the universe. This encounter marks the transition from Job's focus on his personal suffering to a broader reflection on the vastness of God's wisdom and the order of creation. These questions are designed to highlight Job's limited understanding of the natural world and the complexity of creation. God asked Job, "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth?" challenging Job to consider the vast difference between divine wisdom and human knowledge. Through these questions, God leads Job to realize that the workings of the universe are far beyond human comprehension. From the formation of the stars to the behavior of wild animals, God's questioning forces Job to confront his own limitations. This series of questions reminds Job that human beings cannot fully grasp the purposes of God or the intricate ways in which he governs the world. One of the central themes that arises from God's questioning is the mystery of suffering. God never directly explains why Job suffered, but the series of questions emphasizes that suffering cannot always be understood within human logic or reasoning. God's point is clear: the world is far more complex than Job realizes, and there are divine purposes at work that transcend human understanding. By asking Job about the intricacies of nature, things like the birth of mountain goats or the flow of rain, God demonstrates that his control over the world is comprehensive. Just as Job cannot comprehend the natural world, he is similarly unable to grasp the divine reasoning behind his own suffering. The questioning leads Job to recognize that his suffering is part of a larger, divine plan that he is not equipped to fully understand. Through this divine encounter, Job comes to a deeper realization of God's immense wisdom. God's questions invite Job to humble himself and acknowledge that his finite mind cannot fully understand the infinite wisdom of the Creator. The encounter forces Job and readers to consider the possibility that some aspects of life, particularly suffering, may remain a mystery in this life, but are ultimately within the scope of God's perfect knowledge and care. One of the most important themes of God's response is the superiority of divine wisdom over human wisdom. Job's friends, who had spent much of the book arguing with him, believed they understood the reasons for his suffering based on their theological knowledge. Even Job, in his earlier speeches, sought to understand his suffering in terms of justice and fairness. But through the whirlwind encounter, God reveals that his wisdom is far greater than any human attempts to make sense of suffering. The message to Job, and by extension to us as believers, is that human beings must trust in God's wisdom, even when they cannot understand his ways. This theme challenges individuals to recognize their limitations and embrace faith in God's higher purposes, particularly during times of suffering and hardship. A key takeaway from God's response is that suffering remains a mystery in many cases. Rather than offering Job a clear explanation, God redirects Job's attention to the grandeur of creation and the complexity of divine governance. This redirection suggests that not all suffering can be understood through a lens of cause and effect or human logic. Job's suffering was not a result of personal sin or failure, but part of a divine narrative that extended beyond his immediate understanding. God's message in this encounter is that suffering is not necessarily a punishment, but part of the broader reality of human existence. Through this, readers are encouraged to trust in God's sovereignty, even when the reasons behind their suffering remain unclear. Ultimately, God's response to Job calls for faith amidst uncertainty. Job is reminded that while he may not understand the reasons behind his suffering, he can trust that God's wisdom is perfect and his plans are good. The whirlwind encounter teaches that faith does not require complete understanding. Rather, it invites believers to trust in God's goodness and wisdom, even in the face of inexplicable hardship. After God's powerful response to Job from the whirlwind, Job is deeply moved. He realizes the vastness of God's wisdom and the limitations of his own understanding. In response, Job humbly acknowledges his earlier presumptions and repents. In Job chapter 42, verses 1-6, he says, "I know that you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I despise myself and repent in dust and ashes." This repentance is not an admission of sin related to his suffering, but rather a recognition of his limited perspective and a submission to God's infinite wisdom. Job's response marks a pivotal spiritual transformation. He moves from questioning God's justice and seeking answers to fully trusting in God's sovereignty. This moment of realization is a turning point in Job's journey. He understands that while he may never fully grasp the reasons behind his suffering, he can trust that God's ways are righteous and just. Job's humility in the face of divine wisdom allows for a renewed relationship with God, one that is based on deeper faith and understanding. Job's encounter with God changes the way he views the world and his relationship with the Creator. Previously, Job had adhered to a conventional view of divine justice, assuming that righteousness would always result in blessings and wickedness in punishment. However, through his suffering and subsequent conversation with God, Job learns that divine governance is far more complex than he originally thought. Job's realization emphasizes that faith in God does not always result in immediate understanding of his actions, but requires trust in his ultimate wisdom. This new understanding is the foundation upon which Job's restoration will be built, not merely a restoration of his material wealth, but a deeper, more intimate relationship with God. After Job's repentance and newfound humility, God restores his fortunes. Job, chapter 42, verse 10 says, "The Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he prayed for his friends, and the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before." This verse highlights two key elements of Job's restoration: the act of praying for his friends, which signifies Job's complete forgiveness of their false accusations, and the doubling of his previous wealth, which symbolizes divine grace. Job's material wealth is restored twofold. He receives more livestock, greater riches, and new prosperity in his land. The doubling of his possessions demonstrates that God's blessings are abundant and far exceed the losses Job had suffered. This restoration also serves as a sign of God's favor and the fulfillment of his purposes in Job's life. In addition to his material wealth, Job's family is restored as well. God blesses Job with more children, 7 sons and 3 daughters. It is significant to note that Job's daughters are described in detail. which was unusual in the cultural context of ancient Israel. Job's daughters are said to be the most beautiful in all the land, and unlike most women of the time, they receive an inheritance alongside their brothers. This emphasis on Job's daughters indicates a full restoration of family unity and divine blessing on Job's lineage. Job's restored family signifies the healing of his personal and relational wounds. After losing his children in the earlier chapters, the birth of new sons and daughters offers Job a sense of renewal and continuation. The mention of their beauty and inheritance also reflects God's abundant favor and grace in Job's life after his season of suffering. The closing verses of Job's story describe how he lived for an additional 140 years after his restoration, long enough to see 4 generations of his descendants. Job chapter 42, verse 17 says, "And Job died an old man and full of days." This phrase, "full of days," signifies a life of completeness and contentment. Job's extended life is symbolic of the fullness of God's blessing and serves as a testimony to God's faithfulness. The longevity of Job's life, combined with his restored wealth and family, underscores the comprehensive nature of his restoration. It reflects God's intention not only to bring Job through his trials, but also to reward him with an abundant, meaningful life afterward. Job's story offers invaluable lessons for anyone grappling with suffering and hardship today. In an age where people seek answers to the injustices and pain they endure, Job's experience reminds us that not all suffering is a direct consequence of personal wrongdoing. Often, life's difficulties arise without clear reasons, leaving us searching for explanations. Like Job, individuals today may find themselves questioning God's justice or struggling to reconcile their faith with their circumstances. Job teaches that in times of suffering, the path to peace and understanding is not necessarily through finding answers, but through trusting in God's sovereignty. His unwavering faith, despite unimaginable trials, encourages modern readers to hold on to their belief in a just and loving God, even when life seems unjust and cruel. Job's journey underscores that suffering is not the final word. There is always the potential for growth, restoration, and a deeper connection with God on the other side of hardship. For those facing trials today, Job's perseverance and integrity offer profound encouragement. Job never fully understood why he suffered, but he continued to cling to his faith. This is a critical lesson for believers. Faith is not dependent on circumstances. Even when life is filled with adversity, faith sustains, and through it, one can endure. Job's steadfastness can inspire those dealing with personal loss, chronic illness, broken relationships, or financial struggles to maintain hope. His story shows that it's okay to express frustration and question one's circumstances. God is big enough to handle our doubts and fears. However, it also encourages turning to God for strength rather than giving in to despair. Job's unwavering commitment to God, even in his darkest moments, is a model for how to navigate life's greatest challenges with faith. Faith plays a central role in Job's story and is equally important in navigating the trials of modern life. Job's faith allowed him to endure when everything else was stripped away: his wealth, family, health, and social standing. In a world where people often base their identity on external achievements and possessions, Job's story challenges us to anchor our lives in something deeper, a relationship with God. For believers today, faith is not just a means of coping with suffering, but a way to find purpose within it. Job's faith enabled him to maintain his integrity and trust that despite his circumstances, God was still in control. In modern times where uncertainties abound, be it in health crises, economic instability, or global conflicts, faith provides a foundation that can withstand life's storms. The lesson from Job is clear: faith does not guarantee a life free from suffering, but it does offer the strength to endure it. Moreover, Job's ultimate restoration points to the fact that God's plans are always for our good, even when they are difficult to understand. Faith in God's timing and purposes, even in the face of suffering, leads to resilience, growth, and eventual restoration. The story of Job encourages each of us to reflect on our own lives and faith journeys. Are we holding on to our faith in the midst of suffering, or are we allowing our circumstances to shake our trust in God? Job's story challenges us to seek humility before God, to trust His timing, and to recognize that our suffering, though painful, may lead to deeper spiritual growth. I invite you to reflect on your own life and how Job's story speaks to your circumstances. Consider how you can apply the lessons of resilience and faith in your challenges today. Take a moment to seek God's wisdom and strength, trusting that He is with you in every trial. If this story has resonated with you, please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments section. Let's continue the conversation about how faith helps us navigate life's difficulties. Be sure to like this video, subscribe for more biblical stories and lessons, and share it with others who may need encouragement from Job's journey. Together, let's walk this journey of faith, trusting that God will lead us through even the most difficult seasons of life. God bless you. See you in our next video.